Guys, I love this movie so much. I am figuratively dying. Hi everybody, Carla here, and so last weekend I got the chance to finally walk out of my house on my own means for once without needing any assistance in case I was about to faint or something. For the first time since I got sick, I was able to go out of the house for something other than a medical procedure, which is great, let me tell you, it felt awesome. So I went to the movie theater with my family to go watch Love, Simon, which is a movie that I've been anticipating for so long. Guys, the trailers for this movie were so fantastic that it really sucks that I have to live in freaking Narnia because we get everything late. So while everybody in the United States was already watching this movie in March, I had to wait until this past weekend for it to open here, and I was so hyped for this movie. The trailers looked so good. I love all the actors involved. I couldn't wait to see this movie, and I finally got to see it on Sunday, and it did not disappoint. I love this movie so much that I've already watched it twice, just so you know, I like it that much that I had to go watch it again. I'm so happy. It makes me so happy. It's such a great movie. And for me, it holds a special place in my heart, not just because of what it means in terms of it being the first movie with an LGBT lead, and in terms of it being a mouthpiece for the LGBT community and representing LGBT kids, it being the first major studio production that does all of that. But also, it's important to me because, see, I grew up in the 90s, okay? I was born in the 80s, but I'm technically a 90s kid. I still like a lot of 80s stuff because down here we got everything late, so you know, when people were singing to certain types of music in the 80s, I was getting them in the 90s, and when people were watching certain shows and certain movies in the 80s, I was getting them in the 90s. But in general, I'm a 90s kid, basically. Like, most of my formative years were spent in the 90s. And one thing that the 90s had that we don't really get as much of these days is the quintessential teen coming-of-age romantic comedy type thing. I grew up with those. Some of my favorite movies in the world are, you know, the 10 Things I Hate About You, She's All That, American Pie. Those were the movies I grew up with. Those are the movies that kids my age would go see when I was growing up. You know, that's the kind of stuff we went to see in the theater. We didn't have Marvel and DC, and I mean, we had a little bit of DC. Marvel was terrible back then, but we had a little bit of DC with the Batman movies and whatnot until those got terrible. So we didn't have like the big like tentpoles. We had like the big sci-fi stuff with like Armageddon and stuff like that, but no, with kids would mostly go and watch teen movies. Movies especially made for teens and about teens and coming of age and that kind of stuff. So that's the stuff I grew up with, and I feel like nowadays we don't see as much of that. Or if we do, they're smaller, more indie type stuff that are very deep and are not as much like widely popular type comedy and romance and stuff. Teenage movies these days deal with such deep topics that you don't find a lot of those movies where you just go have fun with it. You know, you go have a laugh and you go get feelings from the movie, but you don't have to like get so deep into it. And it's funny because I'm not a sentimental person, like, at all. I am the most cynical person you will ever meet when it comes to romance and, you know, interaction of that kind. I won't try to psychoanalyze myself too much, but I'm just gonna say I'm like not a romantic person. I'm not a feelings type of person, generally speaking, except in fiction. Because I really it's so funny because in my life I don't have any of that, but in fiction I really love romance and romantic stories, and I especially love romantic comedies, not just teen ones, but just general romantic comedies. If you have seen like the type of movie that I love, I actually made a video about this, of movies that I watch over and over because they make me happy. A lot of them happen to be romantic comedies, a lot of them happen to be teen romantic comedies, because I like those. They make me feel like I'm a child again and I don't have as many problems again, precisely because I grew up in the 90s watching those types of movies and we don't get enough of them these days. And it's funny because we came back from the movie theater on Sunday, and I was getting dinner down in the kitchen, and my mom comes up to me like, "So what did you go watch?" And I'm like, "Oh, we went to watch Love, Simon." She has no idea what Love, Simon is. She probably has never seen anything about this movie, so I figured she would say, "Oh yeah, whatever." And she looks at me and she goes, "Wait, is it like about romance?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "That's so weird, you never like that stuff." And I'm like, "Mom, come on." Yeah, it's true. I mean, in real life I'm not like mushy and sentimental, but I do like movies that are like that. I like it in fiction, I like it in books, I like it in TV shows. I'm very into the romance thing when it comes to anything but my own life, basically. So it was just a funny moment that I had with my mom. My mom was like, "That's so weird." And I'm like, "It's not really that weird. It's just, you know me in a different plane of existence, I guess." But I was so excited to watch Love, Simon, primarily because it's such an important movie, and I think it's a milestone. But also because I just like movies like that, whether or not they have to do with LGBT characters or not. I just like teen movies, teen romantic comedies, and Love, Simon just did not disappoint at all. I adore this movie so much, you guys. Like, it's so... My favorite thing about it, I think, is... Well, first of all, the dialogue is perfection. You know, it's like kind of a funny, quippy, quick fire type dialogue that you would see in something like the Gilmore Girls, for example. It's like everybody's back and forth is so quick, and I love that. I find it very witty. It makes me laugh. Every character had such great lines. I loved it. You know, like I could quote a line from basically every single character that I adored. Starting with that, the dialogue was fantastic. I also really love that the characters are so relatable. Like, they're not stereotypes, you know what I mean? They feel like real teenagers with real teenage issues, but not like too over dramatic either. It's like it's stuff you even I, who am not a teenager anymore and haven't been for many years, even I can be sort of like, oh yeah, I relate to that. Like I've been through that at some point in my life, and I found them all really likable. Like, even that jerk Martin had a little moment in the end which made me think, oh, okay, you're not terrible. You're an idiot, but you're not a horrible person. You know what I mean? And that's very cool. I love Simon. I find him so sweet, and yeah, he doesn't do everything right. He makes mistakes, and I think that makes him more easy to love in a sense. But here's a guy who genuinely loves his family. He has no problem with his family at all. He loves his friends. He actually has a pretty decent life, except for the one secret he cares about, which weighs on him a lot. And not necessarily because he has an issue with being gay, but mostly just because he doesn't want things to change in his life, and he knows if he comes out, things are going to change. And also he's, of course, afraid that this one guy that he's falling in love with will be scared off. And I find that very understandable, you know? It's not something that's like, oh my god, I'm so depressed right now that I'm gonna have to kill myself. No, it's comparatively simple, I guess. It's straightforward, but it's still important. He has issues that he needs to deal with, and that he needs other people around him to deal with as well. And it's not the end of the world, but it's important to him, and it hurts him when things go against what he hoped he would get. And he was just fun. He was like a regular kid. He didn't have any specific, like, talents or stuff. He was just a kid who found somebody who understood him on some level, and he started talking to that person and started getting attached to that person, and it's also totally normal that you can't help but relate. And I really loved him. I think Nick Robinson, I used to watch Nick Robinson in Melissa and Joey, and I thought he was cool there. He was very Simonish there too. I'm glad he had this chance to actually lead a movie, because he totally carries that role. He's so good. Like that scene in the parking lot with Martin was just so fantastic, and he's able to portray that fear that Simon has, that everything is going to be different, so well with so little, and it makes you feel for him for sure. Like, I was actually quite surprised, because where I live is not a particularly progressive country. It's not. Like, I think my country's like 90% Catholic and like 97% religious or something like that. People are not very open when it comes to the whole LGBT community thing. There's a lot of backlash for gay people, especially. So, you know, I wasn't expecting this movie to like be a huge hit. I wasn't expecting the theater to be packed like it would be for like an Infinity War or something. And it wasn't. It wasn't really packed, but there were more people than I expected. A lot of young people especially, which I think is great. Because I do think the youth here is more progressive, and that's a good thing. But it was fairly full. Like, I think only the last 3 lines closest to the screen were empty, but everything else from there up was occupied, which I thought was more than I expected, honestly. I was expecting like us and like 2 or 3 more groups or something, but there was a lot of people. And there's a moment in the movie, which, by the way, I should warn you, and I forgot to do this earlier, but there will be spoilers of the movie here. If you haven't seen it when it came out in March in your country, really, you should have seen it by now. But there will be spoilers.
Danger, Will Robinson! Danger! No, Will Robinson! Danger!
And one of the spoilers is that when Simon first tells someone, when he first utters the words out loud that he's gay, it happens with his friend Abby in a car in the middle of nowhere. He's just like taking her home on their way back from Waffle House, and he just tells her, because she told him and Martin something really personal to her, so he like feels that he should tell her something really personal, and he just blurts it out. He goes, "I'm gay." And I was not expecting this, but the entire theater just burst out in applause. And I felt so happy. Like, I was not expecting anybody in this freaking backwards country to actually be like that. But and it wasn't like a big moment. He was just sitting there and he was like, "I'm gay." And everybody's like, "Woo!" And I'm like, what is going on? Like, but it made me feel really happy. Because I feel like people get it, and people had noticed that he hadn't said it yet out loud. And they know how important that is, to accept, to admit it to yourself for the first time. I think everybody sitting there, regardless of their sexual preference and their sexual orientation, understood what that moment meant, and that made me feel really happy. And I think Nick Robinson is he's a gem. he was so great. Personally, out of the whole cast, I think my favorites were probably Leah, because I don't know, I felt like I identified more with her. I don't know, I mean, I've never been in love with my best friend for 13 years, but thank goodness. But I felt like I understood her a bit in that conversation that she has with Simon when they come back from the party, which, by the way, can we talk about that party? That party was hysterical. Fancy Jesus. Oh god, I loved it. But when they come back from the party and she's talking to him when they go to bed, and she's telling him that sort of she always feels on the outside, like there's always a line dividing her from the rest of the group and being part of the rest of the group, and that line, it's invisible and she isn't quite able to cross it. I feel like that. I don't, probably now a little bit more, because, you know, when you grow up, your friends aren't as close as they used to be. But also, you know, when I was a kid, when I was in high school, I used to feel that way a lot. That sense that I had some kind of like wall put up for some reason, that I wouldn't let people in, even though they were my best friends. I'm like that a bit. Like, I would go to parties and hang out with my friends, and it would be totally fun, but you still kind of feel like you're not sort of in there. You're just you, and you can see it from the outside, and you're not sort of giving yourself entirely to being totally open with these people. So that conversation actually hit me really hard, because I felt a lot like that when I was a kid. It wasn't a big deal, like, you know, I always figured, yeah, that's the way I am, that's what it is. I'm not that kind of people who just opens up to their closest friends about everything. I'm not like that. And I kind of got used to it in a way that I feel she sort of got used to it too. But you know it's there, right? You know you're sort of keeping people at a distance, and you don't know how to cross that distance. So I really liked her character. I think Catherine Langford, I haven't seen 13 Reasons Why. I feel like that one would be a little bit too heavy for me to watch. I'm not as comfortable with that. But I think she did a great job with that, and her character didn't get a lot of focus necessarily. Like, you could totally see that she was in love with Simon, and Simon was being an idiot, not realizing it, and then telling her to go out with Nick. You could see that twist coming, so she didn't get a lot of focus during the movie, but I feel like that one scene in particular really resonated with me, apart from the whole Simon deal. But yeah, I loved her. I loved Josh Duhamel as the dad. He was great, man. I mean, Jennifer Garner is always good, and she was good as the mom. My only complaint is that I wish she would have hugged him a little bit more, like that one scene that she had where she was telling him that she sort of had an idea that he was hiding something, and that she just wanted him to know that he is still Simon, that he hasn't changed, but that now he's free. It was a great scene. I just wish she had hugged him at the end. I'm like, why don't you hug your son, really? But, you know, she's always great, so I have no complaints about her. But Josh Duhamel, that scene they had in the garage, I really loved that. He did such a great job of portraying a father who's honestly caught by surprise. Like, he's caught by surprise, and he doesn't know how to deal with it, but he knows that he loves his son and that he wouldn't change anything about his son, and he's just going to have to get used to it, you know? And it doesn't mean that he loves him any less. And I thought that scene was so great. Like, if there were a bunch of people like 2 or 3 rows from me, spent like the entire movie crying. Seriously, like sobbing out loud. It was so incredible for me to hear. It's like, are we in the Passion of the Christ, or what is happening? You know what I mean? But I'm not much of a crier, so I didn't. People are like, "Oh, did you cry when you watched Love, Simon?" And I'm like, no, but I never cry. Very rare. Like, the last time I cried was in The Lion King when I was 9 years old. But I think if there was one scene I had to pick out of the movie that I would have cried had I been any other person, it would be the scene with Josh Duhamel. You know, this is a dad he's not a bad dad, he's a great dad. His kids love him, and he is open-minded, he's not like a macho guy, like he doesn't have any prejudices, but it still caught him by surprise. And sometimes, you know, parents have expectations of kids, and that's not necessarily a bad thing unless you impose them on your kids. And I think they did a good job with balancing that. And eventually he just, you know, he comes through that moment where he tells Simon that he wouldn't change anything about him. He's still his kid, he still loves him. And I think that was such a fantastic scene. Probably my favorite scene in the movie, honestly. And just every they were all so much fun. Every character was so fun. I loved Abby, like she was with it. You know, she wasn't taking shit from anybody. Nick was hysterical, like, I'm dressed as Ronaldo. Seriously? Like, I loved him. Bram, I wish we could have seen a little bit more of Bram, but I loved his take on, you know, post-presidency Barack Obama. Ha! Hysterical. I just adored that. The vice principal made me crack up every time. The theater teacher, I loved her. Like, she stole every scene she was in. Absolutely, she was fantastic. Even the little sister got that one scene with Simon, which I thought was really sweet. So yeah, I mean, everybody in this movie was so great. The acting was fantastic. The dialogue was great. Just the plot itself was fantastic as well, because you could see that both Simon and Bran were terrified of what was happening between them, basically, and terrified of this secret that nobody knew. And I think the movie does a great job with selling that, while at the same time dealing with the regular teenage issues around that. I thought that was really cool. The music was fantastic. I like that soundtrack is so great. And it's just it's a feel-good movie. If I have one criticism, is that at the end, of course, Simon decides that he's, you know, going to ask Blue to come meet him in public where everybody can see them. And it's like, that made me feel a little bit bad, because I'm like, you couldn't do that in private first. Like, Martin outed you, don't force. I know he's not like outing Bram, but it's sort of forcing his hand, you know. Bram wouldn't want to be a jerk either. So it's like, either you come out or you're a jerk, and I didn't like that. It's a false choice in a way. Like, he could have done it in private, I felt, and then just go with it as Bram decided to come out on his own. But still, like, every time I see a Ferris wheel in a TV show or in a movie, and it has something to do with a couple, every time I see that, I think back to Everwood. Because that's where my brain just goes. And I love Everwood. So in the end, even if I complain about how it happened, I still really, really love that moment. You know, when Bram comes up and he's like, Simon's like, I'm waiting for someone. And Bram's like, yeah, I know. You know, it's like, and everybody is below cheering on them, which is really good. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, do you have to be in public? I don't know. I mean, I have conflicted feelings about it, but in the end, I really love it because, again, it's a moment of bravery for both of them, really. Simon is putting himself out there in a big gesture, which kind of, you know, if you see earlier, it totally backfired on Martin when he tried his big gesture. But Simon isn't forcing anyone's hand necessarily, because nobody knows who Blue is. So if Bram doesn't want to come, then fine, he doesn't want to come, and it's gonna suck for Simon. But you see that he's putting his you know, feelings out there, and for Bram, of course, for coming out. And another thing I like is that Bram is not your stereotypical gay dude. He's not like, you know, it's good that they introduce diversity into this, because you don't see as many stories of black dudes who are gay. They're very underrepresented even in the LGBT community, when there are many black people who are gay, but they don't get that visibility as much. So it's good that, yeah, he's black, he's Jewish at the same time, and he's gay, and that's really cool. I found that really fun, and Keenan Lonsdale is so adorable that you just have to, like, every time he was on screen I just smiled. He's so cute. So yeah, it's a nice ending, and I really like the parallels of it, like, you know, picking everybody up in the car and getting coffee, and how it changed from the beginning to the middle to the end. And I thought that was really interesting. Really cute, really just adorable. And there are so many things. I feel like this is a movie that I'm going to be rewatching, like in the same vein as like 10 Things I Hate About You, or in the same vein as Pitch Perfect, or like Footloose, or stuff like that. This is a romantic comedy that I'm gonna be rewatching over and over again, and I am already quoting it everywhere, so that's saying a lot. But so many quotes that I can just adore, like anything that came out of Ethan's mouth to begin with. Fancy Jesus, and this is a Make-A-Wish situation. There's so many things in this movie that I can quote. So I really enjoyed Love, Simon. I'm definitely gonna get it on DVD when it comes out. Liberal University, guys, come on, it was so perfect, and that whole montage of like heterosexual people coming out. I love that so much. There's so many great moments in this movie. Like my brother's not into romantic comedies as I am, but he was sitting right beside me and he was laughing his ass off in a way that I wasn't expecting. So this movie's really freaking funny and really quotable and just really heartfelt. I really walked out of there with a big smile on my face. I really enjoyed it. I think this movie is super important to so many people, like all the gay people that I know. I feel like this movie gives them a little bit more visibility, and it's an interesting point that it makes too, because you know they had Ethan there and he had already come out, and that's kind of the point that Martin makes in the parking lot. He's like, well, Ethan's around, so I figured you wouldn't get any crap. That's not how it works. And again, I have a lot of friends who are gay, and I feel like every little step we take toward normalizing the LGBT community, as it should be normal, because it is normal. But a lot of people still see them as other, and still see them as, you know, that group that has nothing whatsoever to do with me and that is different from me, and that is wrong. And every little step mainstream media as a whole can take to letting people know that no, gay people are just like you and me. They fall in love, they have issues with their families, they get into fights with their friends sometimes, and they just want to be happy. I think every step why their audiences take toward realizing that being gay is normal is a good step, and I think this movie in particular was really important to really a lot of people who have not seen themselves represented on screen in such a clear way. Because yeah, there's gay people in movies, but they're very rarely the leads in stories, and they're very rarely their issues are dealt with like this. I feel like this is a very important movie, but on top of that, it's just a really great movie, and it's super heartfelt, super fun, and really entertaining. I wish there had been more of it, because it's only like an hour and 45 minutes long. I wish it had been longer, because I wanted to stay with those characters for so much longer. Like, I felt like they were all my friends. So I love this movie. I certainly recommend it to everybody. If you haven't watched it yet, one, what are you doing here? There are spoilers. I told you, I warned you about this. But two, just go watch it. it's a really great movie, and you will have so much fun with it that all I can say is go watch it. I am sure that I will be getting it on DVD and I will be watching it over and over again through the years because it just makes me smile. It makes me feel happy. So maybe it'll help you feel happy too, whoever you are, when you're watching. So yeah, that's about it for my review of Love, Simon. Again, just go watch it. You'll thank me later. But yeah, that's about as much as I wanted to say. Headache's starting to come in, damn it. But so yeah, I'm gonna keep it short this time-ish. It's not really that short. Anyway, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you like my stuff, please subscribe to my channel. I'm always happy to see people sharing and liking and commenting and subscribing. It helps me. Every little thing you do around this video helps me a lot, so pass it on to your friends. While you're in the comments, if you have any suggestions of topics that you need to talk about in the future, please drop them there. If there's anything that I know anything about, if it's any topic that I'm knowledgeable about, be it, you know, any kind of geeky stuff like books and movies and stuff like that, TV shows, etc. Just drop it in there. If I know anything about it, I'll make sure to add it to my list of videos to make in the future. I think next week I'm gonna talk Stranger Things, just because it's the one weekend that I have free. After that it's Infinity War, so probably not. Like, I will probably do a review of Infinity War, so I should probably talk about Stranger Things before that, and that's actually next week is when they start filming, the 23rd, so I guess we'll see. Hopefully we'll have some more casting announcements by that point, so stay tuned for that if you're a Stranger Things fan. In the meantime, you can find me on social media. I am on Twitter and Instagram at girlsareweird with underscores between the words, and I am on Tumblr at girlsareweird with hyphens between the words. You can find a Facebook page for this vlog at facebook.com/FreakingNarnia, and as usual, you can find my main webpage at FreakingNarnia.com. All my videos are up there in case you want to catch up if you missed any. They're all up there, so be sure to check that out. Also, don't forget that I have a Redbubble store where I make art based on my favorite quotes from my favorite fandoms, and then you can use that art to print on lots of cool merchandise such as t-shirts, coffee cups, computer covers, all kinds of cool stuff in there, so be sure to check that out and maybe purchase something if you're in the mood. It really does help me a lot. You can also find this vlog in podcast form. Just look up Talks from Freaking Narnia in iTunes and Stitcher and all the major platforms, really. And it's up there up until episode 20. I think I'm still working on it, but be sure to check it out and subscribe. And yeah, that's about it from me today. I will see you guys next week with another talk from all the way in Freaking Narnia. Bye, guys. Primarily, Melissa and Joy. I think my country's like 97% Catholic, and it's a false. Is this a maker? In the meantime, you can also find this vlog and